I'll do a very quick welcome to just call everybody to order. I think you all know me. I'm Véronique Plesch, and I teach art history at Colby College, and I've been involved with the Elsie Bates, involved in the organization of this show for quite a few years. I'll tell you more about kind of the history. Before I pass the virtual podium to Deborah, I would like to acknowledge that the Elsie Bates Museum and Colby College are situated in the homeland of the Wabanaki Confederacy, which encompasses the Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot nations. We express our respect for the indigenous communities, past, present, and future of these ancestral lands. So now I pass the podium to Deborah Staber.
Hello and welcome to the virtual opening of the exhibit Marks and Tracks. The Elsie Bates Museum staff and committee and Goodwill Hinckley are pleased that during this extraordinary time when the museum has been closed, the museum can continue to hold summer exhibits that connect nature and cultural worlds. We want to thank the student curators, Whitney and Carissa. We want to thank Professor Véronique Plesch. We want to thank the participating artists, every one of them, there's a lot, and the Colby College for making the interesting virtual exhibit possible. We hope next year to be live again and see a lot of you back coming to the museum. And just so you know, the museum isn't open right now, but the nature trails are open and the area behind the museum. And I'm going to put a plug in our John Ramonde sculpture behind the museum. Christopher will be 50 years old this summer and we'll be able to have an opening outside for that. So there'll be one event you can come to that's definitely designed for art. Do enjoy the wonderful exhibit. I've seen some of the work and it's absolutely amazing. And what's especially amazing for people and what people talked about last year is how this artist statements with the work really helped them understand it. It was really helpful to see it on the screen. Often when they came in the museum, they said they didn't bother to read the statements. It was small, it was off to the side. But they've all told me that they read the statements and they care about it when they see it online and connected. It's more like a story or more like a book, I guess is what they're telling me, than it is when you come into the museum, even though they like seeing the real work. I'm not taking away from that, but there is a sense that it gives them a different exposure than they would have had otherwise. And it makes them feel like they're part of the artist's work when they hear the statements and the comments that the artists say about each personal piece. The paintings really are something that we would like to have on the walls. It is very lonely in the museum right now. I'll have to tell you, it is lonely, but we're hoping that maybe later in the year, we'll be able to host a few of the paintings for people to see. And we hope that people will be able to come for those. Do call the museum if you have any questions about all this or want to know more about what the museum is doing. And again, thank you very much for coming to the virtual opening and make sure you enjoy the whole exhibit. Thank you very much and look forward to seeing you virtually and in real life soon. Thank you.
Veronique, I think.
Sorry, yes, I know. I just noticed it. So thank you, Deborah. I'm going to share my screen and go to this PowerPoint. There and there. Whoops. No. Hang on. Oh, God. Sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. It's easier. Voila. Okay. So this is, in fact, the 12th year that two Colby College students curate the Elsie Bates Summer Exhibition. And something really coincidental just happened a few days ago. This past Wednesday, I had the visit of Margaret Faisal, who, as you can see, graduated in 12 from Colby. And we really owe to Addie, as she's known, this collaboration between Colby and the Elsie Bates. Here's how it started. So yes, if everybody can be sure to be muted. So I joined the Colby faculty in 1994, and I can't remember when exactly I found out that the Elsie Bates existed. I visited it, and I completely fell in love with the museum. I'm going to spare you all the reasons that make me find this museum so amazing and make it really one of my favorite museums on earth. I could spend the whole afternoon telling you the reasons, so we'll skip that. But I would always take out-of-town visitors to the museum. I mean, that's kind of on my, to-do visits with visitors. And whenever I would go there, I would have a wonderful chat with Deborah. And very, very quickly, I started thinking, how can I help the museum? And it occurred to me that we should try to figure out a way of sending Colby students as interns to the museum. So with that in mind, that's where Addie comes into the picture, because her mom was coming to visit it was her second year at Colby. Parents' weekend come, and her mom is about to come from Kansas City, and Addie asks me where she should take her mom. And so, of course, I said the Elsie Bates. The other place I mentioned as well was the South Solon Meeting House. So Addie took her mom to those two places. Then she started chatting with Deborah, and she too had fallen in love with the museum. And as they were chatting, they decided that Addie should help with the summer show. So she started working on the summer show, but quite quickly realized it was a lot of work. So she enlisted, this is the interior of the museum. She enlisted the help of her best friend, Yuri Maruyama, who also graduated the same year with a degree in art history. This is a picture of them a few years ago when they came back to Maine to visit. Together, they curated Bones, a magnetic reaction, and that took place in 2010. It turned out to be a true win-win situation, as both Yuri and Addie had a remarkable experience, and they also helped this important institution. As a result, and the following year, the experience was formalized into a curatorial practicum for which two students, so I took my cue on their experience, realizing that you needed two people to really manage the organization of the show, the curation of the show. And those two students receive academic credit and a grade. And I've been overseeing that ever since. And I must say, even the years I've been on sabbatical, I have overseen the show. I just couldn't let it go. So I care too much about the summer show and what it does for our students. What I do is early in the fall semester, I actually advertise the practicum, and Whitney and Carissa applied. They had to provide a resume, a letter expressing their interest, just like for a real job. And then I select, the ones. I think, Carissa, you had even applied last year. And so, yeah, this year I then, before selecting someone, checked with Carissa if she wanted to do it, since she was graduating this year. We'll talk more about Carissa in a minute. So here you see some past past curators. Now, on the 15th of March, 2020, as some of you know, Colby did what many schools throughout the country did. Colby sent the students home. And so that year's curators, Sabina Garibovich and Lola Collins, had to switch to an online version of the show. You can see them on the bottom left of the screen. And so that virtual show they created found a logical home in the website that was created that very semester by students in a humanities lab that I was teaching just that semester, which was, of course, another great instance of collaboration between the college and the museum. Unfortunately, as the museum is still closed to the public, this year's exhibition is once again virtual. And so I'm sorry we can't have our wonderfully festive and convivial opening with a splendid spread. Here you see an example from the past, which is provided by our neighbors in Fairfield, Meridians. Excellent restaurant, strongly recommend, and great store across from the restaurant. That reception with the catering from Meridians is supported by Colby's Center for the Arts and Humanities, by the way. In fact, what happened a few years ago is the summer exhibition would have an artist reception during the summer. And so we moved the opening to the very, very end of the school year. So students could actually be there and invite their friends, et cetera, et cetera. So it could really become a Colby event, or we could associate Colby with that event. I should say that there's a silver lining, as we discovered when, Lola and Sabina had to shift to an online exhibition, because the virtual format offers a lasting archive of the show. And we firmly intend to retain that online component even after we can go back to physical exhibitions. So there's no going back on that front. There will always be a virtual show. Traditionally, and in keeping with the museum collections, the Elsie Bates summer exhibitions explore the natural world of Maine. Here you can see some of the past posters, and you can see the themes that we addressed, as themes such as the Maine sky, the Maine landscape through the seasons, Maine's fields and open spaces, and of course, the beings that inhabit these spaces. For instance, in 2018, the birds. Although that year, and with a rather unexpected turn, thinking about how rural Maine is, the curators decided to include birds living in urban settings. The 2019 show was dedicated to atmospheric water, and therefore the many forms it can take: snow, ice, rain, fog, and clouds. The 2017 exhibition, Maine Woods with the S between parentheses, so it was both Maine Wood and Maine Woods, was not only about the landscape, but also shed light on how our environment provides an important artistic material, wood, and thus also offered the occasion for a reflection on the making of art. A theme and approach not unlike that of the 2011 show. You can also see the poster on the screen, drawing from the collections when artists came to sketch in the museum and their works were then displayed next to the sources of inspiration. In a minute, we'll hear more about this year's exhibition from our curators, but I will mention the fact that this theme both engages with the natural world, exploring how the landscape has been marked, be it by geological processes or by animal and human presence, and how time leaves marks on both animate beings and inanimate things. While it also offers an opportunity for artists to reflect on their practice and the ways in which they engage with their chosen materials, leaving marks that record their creative activity. Finally, this year's show is the occasion for an exciting collaboration with the Maine Arts Journal, the official publication of the Union of Maine Visual Artists. By the way, Natasha Mayers is the editor-in-chief of that publication. In synchrony with the show, the journal's summer issue will also be dedicated to marks and tracks and will include among its featured artists some of the exhibition's participants. The issue will also offer the opportunity to many more visual artists and poets as well to engage with our theme. Out by July the 1st, the issue will include a review of this exhibition by noted art writer Carl Little, who is here with us. We're so very delighted to be partnering with a publication that fulfills a crucial role for the arts in the state of Maine. As always, our gratitude goes first and foremost to Elsie Bates director Deborah Staber for her unflinching help throughout the curatorial process, and despite all the complications of working remotely. And she was just telling me earlier today how sorry she was to not have been able to ever meet in person our two curators. It's all very sad, but we managed. Thank you also to all the artists who shared so generously their works, with several of them creating artwork expressly for the show. And as you can see in the list, there's over 30 artists in the show. This year's curators are both about to graduate from Colby. Whitney White from Buena Vista, Colorado, is majoring in art history and global studies with a concentration in international relations. She plans to spend time abroad teaching English before continuing her studies in the fields of art history and heritage studies. Well, Whitney is most interested in the relationship between art and memory in 20th century Europe. She tells us that working on this exhibition was a great opportunity to gain valuable curatorial experience and to discover the work of Maine contemporary artists. Carissa Yang from Chicago, Illinois, is a psychology minor with an emphasis on neuroscience. She also has a chemistry minor. Carissa is interested in pursuing a public interest career in the legal field, advocating for underrepresented communities. An avid lover of the arts, she has been a member and chair of the Student Advisory Board for the Center for the Arts and Humanities at Colby, and she's done that since day one, so for the past 4 years. And she works to integrate the arts and sciences together in an interdisciplinary way. With previous experience in curatorial research at the Colby Museum of Art and marketing at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History, for her as well, the chance to curate this show was an unparalleled opportunity to explore the deep relationship that artists have with nature, with Maine, and with the process of art making. And this is where I stop sharing. How do I do that? Oh, darn, I shouldn't have done that too soon. Oh, I have that usual problem. How do I do that? Oh, you guys, how do I do that? Oh, good. Carissa stopped my sharing. Thank you. Guys, it's over to you. Give us the tour.
Yes, thank you so much for that generous introduction, Veronique. And thank you again to Deborah for helping us, allowing us to have this opportunity to put together the show. It's definitely been a dream come true for both Whitney and I. And we both want to express our thanks, of course, to all of the artists in the show again. They have been so patient and enthusiastic and kind and understanding, especially with this pandemic when we've been going back and forth about, whether we would have a physical show or, an in-person one. And so we've been really grateful for all of their support and enthusiasm in allowing us to show their work in this new way this year. So we're very excited to be showing the website. So we will be sharing our screen and giving you a small tour of what the exhibition looks like virtually this year. And after the artists speak, we will have the link in the description box in the chat. So you will all be able to visit the exhibition by yourselves and spend time enjoying all of the beautiful work that's in the show, as well as really reading those artist statements and getting to know the piece on a deeper level.
Yeah, all right. So I'm going to quickly share my screen. Okay, so like Véronique mentioned in the introduction, you can find this webpage just off of the L.C. Bates Museum website. Here at the top under summer exhibitions, if you just click summer exhibitions, it'll take you to this page. If you'd like to visit last year's exhibition, you can do that by clicking on 2020, and then you can also see the posters from the past exhibitions under this link. So here at the top, we just have some welcome words from Véronique. And here, as you scroll down, we have a little thing about how to view the exhibition. So we're going to go through that right now, but if you would like to read through this again when you look through it later on, it's a nice little footnote on how to do that. So down here, we next have the description of this year's theme that we talked about at the beginning. And then here we have our list of artists, all 33 of you artists who participated. So if you click on any of these names, it will take you to an individual artist page. Since all of our artists have submitted very different works, all these pages look a little bit different. This page on Stephen Bird's page, we have his artist statement here. All of the pages feature the artist statements, which, as Deborah mentioned at the beginning, it really helps you appreciate and understand these works. And I think that as you read through all of these different statements, you can see how all of these works connect to each other as well. And so as you scroll down, you can click on the images. When you click on the image, it'll take you full screen so you can really appreciate it. If you just go back at the top, it brings you back to this page. And then here, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a button, Return to Gallery, and that will take you back to this page. And like we said, all of these pages are different. On Véronique Plesch's page, we have a video. On Alan Crichton's page, we have a couple fun little gallery images there too. So this is really fun to explore. I really encourage you to take the time to go through all of these different artist pages. As you scroll down, you get to the gallery view. And this, I think, for me personally, and probably for Carissa too, was the really best part about this experience. It was so fun putting these images together and really seeing how they all relate to each other. And I think that this is something that's so valuable about having a virtual exhibition, is you kind of get to see works together that you really wouldn't get to in a museum setting. So as you scroll down, you go through all the works that are included in the exhibition. Then you can click on them. When you click on the work, it takes you to this page where you can view the works one at a time. If you would like to see it bigger, first you click the eye right here, then you can click this down button, and then it's full screen again. To bring it back up, you just click that button. You can press play and it'll take you through the gallery slowly so you can see all the works one at a time. On the left and right, you have different toggle buttons that will take you over so you can look at these different works. Here's a couple. Okay. And then here, this X at the top, if you just click that, it will take you back to the gallery page. You can keep scrolling through. And again, this is just a really fun way to see all of these different interpretations of the theme. I think that this theme was a really great opportunity for the L.C. Bates Museum to kind of take things in some different directions than they have in the past. We have some great abstract works as well. So overall, I really think that this website is a really great way to see all these works. Of course, we'd love to have seen you all in person, but I think that this really has been a great opportunity to think about all these works in a different way. And like Carissa said, at the end of the talk, we'll drop the link in the chat. The link for the website is also written on all the posters. So there's lots of places to be able to find this website. So thank you. I'll stop sharing.
Yes, we're so excited for you all to be able to view the gallery. So please do take the chance to do that. There are some amazing works in the show and every single one is unique. We're very excited to have some of our artists speaking. And so in a moment, we will pass the virtual podium to them. And we hope that you will listen to their words and be inspired by the theme of this show.
So yes, time for our 4 artists to talk. As I mentioned, we'll have a Q&A period after the 4 of them will discuss their works in the show. And I will ask you to just type your questions in the chat box, and I'll be reading them and directing them to whoever, is the recipient of your questions. And I will share again the screen back to our PowerPoint. So yeah, be sure to be in speaker mode, and so you don't, miss any part of the images. Alan, it's over to you.
Well, okay. I just see my name up there on the screen. Is that, well, okay, there we go. The image, let me start with that because well, first I want to thank everybody for putting this show together. I mean, Whitney and Carissa and Deborah Staber and you, Veronique. I mean, it's terrific. It is a crazy, funky little museum. I love that place. I take all my guests there as well. So I guess there's a French term that's used in environmental circles, environmental sciences and studies called terrain vague. And it's the word stands for those places where man-made structures or man-made environments meet natural environments. Like a median strip on a highway would be an ideal, a simple explanation of the kind of terrain that they're talking about. Yeah, this is kind of right up my alley in a way because I've always been interested in that particular verge where nature meets man-made. And that's pretty much what my work has been about for a long time. That's kind of what charges me. And so where I live up here, if you get, my private plane is Google Earth. And I spend a fair amount of time looking at things from that particular perspective. And this is a piece of the Canadian-American border that's just west of Jackman, Maine. This is what it looks like as it transits around the hills and mountains and bogs and so forth. It's about 20 to 40 feet wide. It's maintained. And it's a pretty minor obstruction to the landscape compared to what the rest of northern Maine looks like from the air. The strip cuts and clear cuts in northern Maine from the air are pretty shocking to see the resource extraction that's going on, especially these days. So the Canadian borderline actually looks pretty demure compared to what the rest of it looks like. You don't see it quite so much from the roads, perhaps, but from the air, it really stands out. It's just the entire northern part of the state of Maine, except for certain publicly owned lands, look like runes and glyphs from some strange hieroglyphics. So we can go to the next image. There we go. I've always enjoyed following animal tracks in the woods, sometimes on my hands and knees if necessary. But it's always kind of revealing. And I was doing that, and I happened to come across a piece of the, I think it's a spur of the Appalachian Trail. It's not the Appalachian itself, but it's a man-made trail. And so I was thinking in terms of building the painting, I was thinking about the difference. The man-made trail has a distinct purpose. It has a destination. It has a starting point and a destination that's pretty determined. Whereas the nature trails, the animal tracks are much more, they meander and they seem less um, direct, and they seem less have less of a purpose, but that's perhaps not at all true. Um, they appear to be random, or some of the directions and the changes in the course, but random is only a word that describes our limitations for understanding the world. Random doesn't actually mean much at all. It's just an intellectual limit. So perhaps animal tracks are just as determinate as man-made trails. Probably about, well, for one thing, I'm sure it's about smell. I'm sure it's also about food. Probably a little bit about mating and things of that nature. So the shock, well, I'll go to the next slide to talk about that. We'll do that. This is called ghost farms. And where I live in central Maine, there's a lot of these farms that have simply moved on. You know, they're reverting back to nature. They're losing their clear-cut geometry. So, and farms are simply a geometric extension of a house. I mean, goes to the house, to the yard, to the geometry of the fields. And when you're walking in the woods, even sometimes in completely quite deep woods and unexpected places, you come across a piece of barbed wire that's grown into a tree, or some other sign of a former use and a former existence. And at some point, this was actually, it must have been a farm, or it must have been an attempt to contain animals on a farm or whatever, but it was part of that geometry. And now it's just simply gone. So it's always a little bit of I think it's kind of exciting and shocking to come across these things in the woods. And that's generally the sort of thing that piques my interest to make a painting. So they're all studio paintings. They're not plein air at all. It takes me forever to do a painting. But I do sketches and notes and things like that in nature outside. But the work itself is completely in the studio. I guess that's pretty much what I would have to say at this point.
Thank you so much, Alan. And we'd love to invite Jeff to also speak about your work now. Jeff, I do think you're muted. Perils of Zoom.
Okay. I was seeing a message that was saying I wasn't allowed to unmute myself, but maybe I was missing some of it. Well, Alan, that was very interesting, and I also am interested in where the natural and the made worlds interact and meet each other. I am a plein air painter, but sort of coincidentally, all the paintings that I have in the show are not plein air paintings. Obviously, it would pose some logistical problems to set up in the middle of the road there and paint. I've seen these for years, these burnouts, and I'm struck by, the grace of some of the marks and how they go back and forth over the painted line. They're calligraphic and often very, very beautiful. And then you consider, the noise and, the intention of the people making the marks is Well, they're varied. I consulted with my neighbor about it, and I was talking to him about, the grace and the beautiful qualities of it. And I said, when your buddies are making these lines, is that what they're thinking? And he said, no, just trying to make them long and dark. But I think, that there's a variety of motivation, because some of them, just to play with, the lines in the road are you can't ignore that. He was also telling me that it's often a greeting, so there's some communication intended. You can sort of leave these in front of your buddy's house. You can make them when you're leaving the party, it's sort of a farewell, And just to clarify, a lot of people think that these come from, applying the brakes, but no, these are done with acceleration, and the maker of them, they need to have the computer in the vehicle sort of reconfigured so that, because vehicles are designed so that you don't do this, so that you don't peel out. So anyway, they've gone to a lot of trouble to do this. And I just love it. So anyway, this was over near Tennant's Harbor. And this I was actually out looking for them. I'd been over there and I saw a lot, so I went back to look for material. So, okay, Veronique, I think I'm okay. This is near where I live in Cushing, and I noticed the lines and the way they related to the telephone poles. I love the placement of this one in the middle, and then the two little echoes, which were done long before the central one. And a lot of times I see these sort of as I'm, going through my day, and I think, oh, I've got to go back and photograph that. This one, it was a foggy day, and I drove home to get my camera, because I love the flatness, the way the fog flattens things out. It sort of brought a little more attention to the marks in the road. So, yeah, thank you. This one is, I'm embarrassed to say, this is my driveway where it meets the road. I finally got some gravel, so I won't be having these anymore. It's, but I was impressed by the way the ice, instead of it being a dark mark, all of a sudden they were these white marks, but also graceful, and just that surface of the ice in the ruts was very interesting to me. So this one, I actually made sort of a collage out of a number of photographs, and a lot of, that garage is the way it is across the street, but the trees were invented, a lot of them. The two tall column-like trees were, what was there just seemed a little overpowering. So, I do feel free to take some liberties with the, with the actual place. So, and I enjoyed the plow. On the right-hand side, there's the sort of piled up snow was from the snow plow. So, and a lot had melted, but that part was still there. So, okay, and this, the weather in Maine, and the way snow is such a big part of the winter experience. And every time, you know, the driveway gets plowed and then you get a little bit more snow and then you make a trip to the grocery store and these marks appear, you know, they're sort of abstract. I had a few years where I was painting my garden hose. Every time you'd move the hose, you'd get a whole new composition. And I've also spent time with the garden hose, you know, flipping it around to try to get a more interesting, and it doesn't work for me. I can flip it around all day and not come up with anything I want to paint. But I sort of discover seeing something, I go, oh, that's a paintable thing. So yeah, so I think that's about it. I love the marks. So, and they're almost collaborative, although this was me going back and forth in the driveway. So thank you for including me in the show.
Oh, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, thank you. So
Sure.
yeah, time for Natasha to talk about her work. Natasha, over to you.
Thank you for putting together such a wonderfully large and diverse show. My work for quite a while now has been about men in suits, men in trouble, world banksters, and the last couple of years it's been about war chests. So I've been decorating these men with medals and bars and stripes and epaulettes and braids and sashes and tattoos. They're often headless, they're intoxicated with their own power, they're dangerous, they're blind, they take part in this world, or they create this world of violence toward one another and toward the planet. And for this show, I thought, well, the bodies are scarred and they're tattooed, they're marked by life. These are the marks and the tracks of life. And the torso becomes like a vessel of hurt and also a vessel of commemoration. I think of it, the chests here, as a record of their activities, of their existence, of their accomplishments. They're measuring and they're flaunting their success and their heroism and their valor and their memories and their friendships. And they're courting death, I think, by putting all these marks on them. And the medals, I think, are like codes or signifiers. There's maybe even like a resume imprinted on their bodies. The medals and the tattoos help announce their identities. They make up their identities. Two of these guys have mom tattoos on them. I guess that probably was the most popular tattoo in the beginning and still is. So what else should I say about this? Maybe in these enraging times, the work reflects my anger and my frustration, and I can lay on it my sense of the absurd, and I can talk about masculine power and white privilege all at the same time. And I can talk about what's scary and threatening, and at the same time be able to infuse a little humor and pattern and color and eccentricity into the work too. So it's probably not as frightening as it first appears. Those are bullet holes, I imagine. So those are marks and tracks, and all the scars on two of those torsos. I think that's all I have to say about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Natasha. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Voila. Let's go to Karen. Over to you, Karen.
And Karen, you'll have to.
Yeah, it didn't work the first time. Okay, are we good now? All right, bravo, thank you. Well, my thanks for being included in marks and tracks. One of the gifts that curators offer artists is the opportunity to see their artwork with new eyes and in a new context. I appreciated thinking about physical, geographical, historical, and personal marks and tracks. I was also reminded that both my process and my content are embedded with the exhibition's theme, marks and tracks. This first work is called Luminous Reach, and I'm going to talk about it in my process for a bit. The reciprocal relationship between the folded and the printed components of the monotypes create the image and the parameters of the perspective. The images are alive with environmental observations and concerns. They're created on plexiglass with inky flats of color and mark. They are then embedded in the paper or Tyvek with a series of folds and passes in the press. Each time the paper is folded and printed, the history of the marks accrue and change. These layers of color, mark, and movement are built upon until I have captured a momentary balance of chance with my fugitive experience and direct concern for the environment. Luminous Reach is fairly complex with about 9 layers and passes in the press. It alludes to both the physical reach in nautical terms and the emotional reach for light in troubled times. Next one, please. Thank you. This next piece, Morning Walk, is also on paper and was created in 2020. While I'm working, it's hard to separate labor, emotions, and intentions. And then there's chance. This, like in life, can be the directional force and impetus for more conscious decisions. Some decisions, like observations, seem analytical. Others are more improvised. Morning Walk is created with fewer colors and passes in the press. It captures a brisk walk along active waters and is more spontaneous in its creation. And then the last piece, Flying Over. Yeah, Flying Over was created this year, and this is on Tyvek instead of paper. The constantly increasing perils of our health, our life, and our climate demand artistic attention and appreciation of our world connections and responsibilities. The difficulty and complexity of our predicaments invigorates my work and challenges my response. Flying Over alludes to an aerial view of a landscape with troubled hotspots of concern. This work consists of 2 layers of Tyvek. The bottom level is a bright orange, and the top layer that has been punctured and printed in 4 colors. I think that this exhibit has offered us all an opportunity to examine marks and tracks in artworks that say, I was here. This is what I saw or understood. My works provide a visual diary of the fact that I was here, perceived with care, and felt deeply to produce artworks with an aesthetic of anxious beauty. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. Thank you all. I think I can stop sharing. There we go. Yeah. So welcome back to full screen people. So yes, Q&A. Let me see if what we have for questions. Let's see, other than kind of comments. So yeah, I think Carl had some reactions. He just discovered Maya Lin's Save 2 Birds with 1 Tree project. I think in response to Natasha's war chests, he was saying, Carl was also saying, so different from, say, Hartley's German officer series. Yeah, I think that's definitely a reference. So, okay, Trisha has a question to both Alan and Jeff. And Trisha says, Trisha, who is Carissa's sister, you both mentioned the intersection of human and natural environments and how that has influenced your work. How has your work influenced you and your relationship with nature? Aha. Well, Jeff and Alan, you're on the spot. Whoever wants to start, go for it. Unmute yourself. Unmute.
Yeah, it said that
Oh, okay.
it said the host had not allowed unmuting.
All right.
Not me. It's might be the other host. I think the artist, you could just stay unmuted. Stay unmuted since we'll be chatting.
Okay.
Okay. Alan, or
What was the question?
So the question was, since you both talked about the intersection of human and natural environments, I thought that was very interesting how both of you were indeed talking about that. But so Trisha was wondering, since that had influenced your work, she was wondering, how has your work working on those issues influenced you and your relationship with nature? Right? Thinking
Well,
about those things, has that had an impact on how you think about nature?
No, definitely. Yeah, I mean, where I live, this is a pretty wild country, sort of. I mean, people in Portland think so. They think you need a passport to come up here. But no, of late, I've been very interested in this whole idea of forestry and a resource extraction. Even good forestry is ugly while it's being performed, but there's definitely a difference between treating nature with some respect and simply treating it as a resource. So I would say that I have a greater sensitivity to the world around me through my art practice than I think I would have had otherwise. So.
For me, I think I'm interested in nature, and early on we were talking about that I've been teaching online for the past year and, half a semester. I don't think I could have done it without being able to just walk outside and breathe or experience nature. As far as my paintings go, I mean, I love being in nature, but sort of I need something sort of unpicturesque to help me see it as a painting. Otherwise I just like to stand there and enjoy it. But as soon as there's some other element like the garden hose or some tire marks or something to kind of take away some of that natural, well, I'm going to say sweetness, but it's I don't mean it in sort of a negative way. It's something to sort of, I don't want people in it, but I like the thought of some sort of human interaction with the environment, just like tracks in the snow or again, tire tracks in the mud. So yeah, so I think it's sort of my appreciation of nature has brought me into this place. So.
Yeah, if I can interject something, since we don't have another question yet in the chat box, just what you just said and what Alan was saying in response to Trisha's really wonderful question is that another thing that this exhibition, I think, and seeing your works and hearing you guys talk about them, made me think about is how marks and tracks, there can be good and there can be bad ones. I think what Alan was saying about forestry, for instance, which are those kind of, cutting into the woods, literally, right? By chopping big expanses of wood, of course, is destructive. Natasha showed wounds, which are clearly, right? If you think about the etymology of vulnerable, vulnus, right, in Latin, wound, and then it made me think what you were just saying, Jeff, about kind of this tension between something too pretty, too picturesque, and again, something more interesting to draw. So I think you guys made us aware of how there's good and bad marks, but and then Karen is all about very positive marks because they're all very deliberate. It's your process. You choose to make them, even though you're folding and handling and maybe mishandling, but ultimately it's for what you want to do. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts about what I just said about good and bad marks.
Well,
any thoughts? Yeah.
I don't see them as good or bad. I just see them as things that are there, and it's the things that I'm painting tend to be sort of the result of something. I mean, the garden hose was basically I was watering the garden, and so I would see these lines, or I'm going somewhere and I sort of happen on these things. I think the tire marks are not they're not necessary. So, but they're necessary for the person who made them, because they want to either leave their mark or a message for their friend, or, just the thrill of ruining your tires. The sport of ruining your tires. And if you want to leave 3 years worth of tire life on the road, that's more expression. But I don't know. They're people living their lives. So
I had no idea burnouts were on purpose. I had no idea.
Oh, yeah.
And I must say, one thing I found, just a quick note on your work and what you were saying about the burnouts and those lines, very interesting because you're really a colorist. And I think your snow painting shows that you're really interested in color. And I don't know, you probably know that old opposition that started in the Renaissance between colore and disegno, the line and the color. And you are a colorist, but you're interested in line with the burnouts and the lines on the road, and yet you also find beauty on something I don't think people would think is beautiful, and that is ruts on mud. Connects with with back to Alan and back to my question. I mean, you were talking about a kind of environmental concerns, and yet you're making paintings of them the same way Natasha is making paintings, sure, with an agenda, but they end up being gorgeous works. So what do you guys think about that tension between making beautiful things?
Well, I mean, you can deal with beauty in a context of absolute destruction. I mean, there's aesthetic choices to be made, obviously, in these things, but in terms of dealing with painting, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the way I work is I'm not really interested in these pastoral dreams and these sort of idealistic ideas about nature. So, but when you look around, and I mean, I make ugly things all the time. I mean, I've participated in clear cuts. I've worked in the woods. I've cut down trees, and I've also built some very nice fences and things like that are aesthetically pleasing for me. Maybe not for what I was trying to keep out, But I mean, it's the natural world and the man-made world are just not separate things anymore at all. And maybe they never were really, but it's the argument that's going on right now about the power line that CMP wants to build. The people that say that they're going to be cutting down trees in a pristine forest have never actually been on a mountaintop looking at a pristine forest that does not exist. The man's marks are all over the landscape. You can't get away from it. You can't, you just can't.
That ties in with one of the questions from Adrienne Beecham. She was going back to, she wanted to make a comment on what Jeff said about man's track, or man's tracks, even if they are unsweet, separate from nature. She asked, where is the line between nature and man? I think that kind of ties in with what you were just saying, Alan, as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's clear distinctions are hard to come by these days, I think, in general.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you were just talking about the power line. So again, there's something about maybe marks being essentially a line, a gesture, a mark, right? That is kind of linear. Yeah. Although this leads us, there's questions for Karen. I think several people are very, very curious about Karen's process. So for instance, Amanda Littleton, who's a printmaker herself, who is in the show, is asking Karen, she writes, I'm curious about how you plan your monotype layers and how closely that process draws from the original place or experience that inspired your work. Karen.
Yes, I'm not trying to capture usually a particular place as much as an experience of that place or that weather or that climate or that light that other people will have some affinity to, not necessarily a direct identity with that location. It depends on, I usually work from light to dark, or I have in the past. This year I've been doing more kind of a complex work and working with Tyvek because it offers a more random and type of fold. Paper would give out after a certain length of time in the press. Every time I folded it was being beat up as it went through the press. So after a while, I would become weary and would just fall apart. So I tried also my work on Tyvek, and it seems to be giving me a bigger latitude with times I can be in the press. I'm trying to, I start with something in my mind, but I'm also, every time you fold that and you hide some part and you reveal another part and then you refold, you're setting up relationships in color that you can't really predict. So I'm having to watch each step and then spend time looking at that step to decide how I can move the color or the mark and the opacity or the translucency of a passage. So it really is individually driven by that step, that process, to go to the next step or process.
You know, what's interesting is that even though your work is completely abstract, right, different from the works of your three accomplices, I think there's another theme that emerges, and it's marks that are either accidental or voluntary, which I think both are very much appearing in Natasha's work. And we haven't really heard much from Natasha. You want to say a few words about those accidental and voluntary marks on those chests, Natasha?
Well, I think that I had been very careful to make the pretty pristine uniforms for quite a while, and then I took the clothes off, and I wanted to show a wounded scarred, a tracked body, because I had been very, probably very angry at these world banksters and these men in suits. And then I started having a little bit more compassion for them, or trying to show a little more empathy for them. And by taking their very pristine suits off, I could mark them up and scar them.
Mhm. Yeah, you're almost suggesting that even getting medals in war is a kind of scarring.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a suggestion, and that actually, I'm kind of echoing what John Meader suggested. We could open the floor, since we have several of our other artists in the show in attendance. Feel free to interject your comments, thoughts. If anybody has questions for one of the other artists in the show, if the artists want to chime in, I'm opening the floor. So unmute yourselves and let's chat. Or
Véronique, I was going to say that I really found the theme, and a lot of the artwork really speaks in the terms of storytelling and the way we tell those stories and the way we convey those stories and the way nature conveys those stories with the way we interact with them. And I find that, you know, tracks they're telling you something about something that happened in the past, and how it happened and how we read them. And I can read them differently than, you know, Abbott might read them, or Alan might read them, or you might read them. And yet there is still some commonality there. And I think we're all drawn to stories, and trying to figure out what happened to make this whatever it is we're looking at.
no, that's a lovely comment, and Whitney actually might even chime in and echo that, because Whitney was in a seminar I teach on tattooing, and one thing we find, you know, in tattoos is they make people tell stories. So I don't know if Whitney wants to echo that, since she wrote a wonderful paper on the topic.
Yeah, yeah, I just think that, you know, tattoos are so fascinating, because we talked a lot in that seminar about how it's like writing on yourself, but it's also sort of writing outwards in a way where when you put something on your body, you're also showing something outwards. And so I think that's also just a really interesting, again, like kind of these different relationships that you see a lot with this theme of marks and tracks, of voluntary, involuntary, and also even the involuntary readings that people might have of a tattoo. And so I think that that's what's so interesting about this theme, is that there are all those different connections that you see.
Yeah. Anybody else has some thoughts, reactions?
Well, John's comment that the tracks do represent something that has happened
Mm-hmm.
in the past. So it's a way of painting or drawing the human activity without including the human. So I think a lot of my work they're evidentiary.
Yeah.
I guess is sort of what fascinates me about the theme that you're using and that whole subject area.
Yeah. You know, that's why we were speaking of the kind of juxtapositions that happen on the website and the way the works were put together. There's a wonderful kind of encounter between Joel Babb's panoramic view of Rome, which is all about the layering of history, hence, as you were saying, evidence, and Bradley Borthwick's relief that is inspired by the Arapakis, the altar of peace in Rome, so an ancient work of art. But you're right, it's all about also how the past continues to be present or to echo in the present as it shapes. And I think that's what you have in those tattoos and wounds on Natasha's torsos too, right? It's what has happened in the lives of those people. And yeah. It's also interesting because we have kind of the landscape, I think, with the presence of Natasha's bodies, all of a sudden we and Amanda's work is a lot about the body on perhaps a more organ and maybe cellular level, but how the body and the landscape gets marked, and how the landscape is an organism, isn't it? Anybody else? I don't want to be blabbing, as you know, I love the theme, but I don't know if anybody else wants to talk. Otherwise, I think people are starting to scoot out, and it's been now an hour and 15 minutes we've been together. So unless someone, yes.
One last thought is
Yes,
I
please.
feel like the act of making paintings, or me doing photography, or whatever it is our art form might be, is our own way of making tracks.
Mhm.
We are the artwork itself is a track of us, and why do we choose to do the things we choose to do? It tells a story about who we are and what we value, and the whole. And it's fun to think about us all doing this together as a group, and we're all working on the same thing, and we're all creating our own tracks as we go along.
Beautiful. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
That really goes back to actually what Karen said when she was talking about, I was here, talking about your last piece, right? So I think it's exactly that. I think as you have those marks of activity, it's also a mark of existence, isn't it? Yeah. Well, I think on this profound note, oh, actually, no, Trisha has a question for our curators. Let's have our curators maybe have the last word. So Trisha is asking to Whitney and Carissa, what were some of the challenges in compiling and connecting all of these pieces? And of course, she thanks you. Thank you to all the artists for sharing your work. Indeed. But yeah, what were the challenges? And what were the positives?
I think that, I want Carissa to chime in too, but I think that it was actually kind of a fun challenge to see how things interacted. Especially, I think we just had a really unique opportunity with this online virtual gallery to really get to move things around and see how different works look next to each other, like aesthetically. And also you'll notice, like on some of those places, you'll have all these different mediums where you kind of start to see some relationships between these different types of marks. And so, I'm not sure if this is really answering the question, because I guess it was challenging to decide which relationships we wanted, but I felt like there were so many different opportunities and ways to change things around. It was really fun and really made me think more about these works, and also just what it means to be a curator, to really try and structure, how people might also look at things in a different way. So I think that it's definitely, taken a lot of thought, but it's been really rewarding and really fun. And what Carissa wants to add as well.
Yeah, I think Whitney stated it really well. I think definitely the greatest challenge was figuring out a good way to put the works in dialogue with one another. And so when you're curating shows for a physical museum, you get to decide which wall they're put on, how they hang relative one another. If you have 3D works, we had sculptures in the show as well as other works. And so where they go and how they stand in the museum and where the viewer will see them. And I think being in an online format, it was difficult to have that taken away. But one of the things that we love about the website that we designed this year is that as you're scrolling through the website page, you can see all of the pieces together. And when you go to the artist pages, you have the chance to see their works in collaboration with their own selves, and then also with the artist statement. And so I think the challenge is coming up with a way to best showcase the works and to give audience members the opportunity to see all of those incredible details. You can open up the pieces into a separate page and then zoom into them to see the details. And so one of the things that I loved about the theme this year was that when you examine marks and tracks, we had taken abstract approaches as well to see, marks within the works. And so when you zoom in, you can see the pieces where, you know, the palette brush has, you know, changed the oil on the painting, or to see the scrapes and the marks when you're making those processes. And so being able to see those and to challenge ourselves to think about dynamic ways to show those works online is really exciting. But definitely, I think it was a good challenge because it really highlights the way that we're interacting with the works. And we hope that it's coming across to everyone who's viewing the show too.
Yeah, it shows that in a way, a virtual show is not so different from a physical show, because you're thinking spatially as well. And you're thinking about the stories. Again, it's a mark as well. And it tells a story. You can tell a different story by juxtaposing different works together, and the proximity makes you see new things. And like you said, I think the theme itself all of a sudden makes you think about the surface and the handling. And yeah, I could go on, but I know, right? So I think, yes, Natasha is thanking everybody. She has to go. Serena thanking everybody. This is the moment when everybody's thanking and being happy. I hope you are. I really want to thank again our wonderful curators. I think you did spectacular work. The challenge was it was all remote and right. Of course, no issues on having to hang the works. That kind of might have made things a little bit easier.
Well, also you could include work that otherwise wouldn't be available.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some of your works are unavailable.
Yeah, two of them.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. The sky is the limit when it's virtual. Yeah. True. We might not have been able to exhibit Joel's panoramic view. I think it was far too big.
Right.
So, you know, there's also the incredible limitations of the museum. So, yeah. Well, thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
Amy Ray, who's in the show, is saying, what a wonderful group of artists, well, including you. She didn't say that, but we believe it. Fantastic way to handle the current situation. I know, and we got together. So I think there's lots of silver linings. Is that a Lois Dodd behind you, Jeff? Or is it?
No, that's a very old Jeff Epstein.
I see, okay. It's a rather Doddian Epstein, I dare say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Hope to see you in person in not too long, and maybe we can have drinks finally.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
And thank you, Deborah. Thank you for virtually making this possible once again, and for the 12th year. Is she there? Or have we lost Deborah? See, that couldn't have happened. We couldn't be in the museum without Deborah.
We thank you because the museum couldn't have done this without you.
You're still there. Okay,
Anyway.
you haven't abandoned us. Oh, good. And I think it's Abbott who's saying it's an honor to take part in the exhibition. Thank you, Carissa, Whitney, Véronique, and Deborah. Of course, we love having Abbott in the show. And yeah, John Meader, this was great fun, and I can't wait to see everyone's work up close and in detail. Yes, I encourage everyone to look at the website. And one thing Deborah was saying is often when it's a physical show, people don't really read the statements, and you've all written wonderfully, very, very deep statement. So look and read. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
People wave at the end of Zooms apparently. So thank you so much.